Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. Keldon here. 2 weeks ago I was thinking about the trip I had at Angkor Wat when I was 13 years old. That was incredible, but I don't really know anything about it. So I just went online, looked up some photos. That got me thinking, okay, how was this building made? Who made it? What tools did they use? I was just asking these basic questions, so I thought, and I had all these convoluted answers. For example, on one page I'll read it took 35 years to make. On another page it said 37. And if I say, hey Google, how long did it take to make Angkor Wat?
Estimated construction time of the temple is 30 years by King Surawarman II. Do you want a little more context?
No. So I started looking into it more and so I thought this week, you know what, I'm gonna make a video on this because this is really interesting. This temple I don't think is what most people think it is. But let's start off with what Angkor Wat is, so you have a little bit more of a historical background, then we can dive a bit deeper into the mysteries and some of the facts. But before we start, don't forget to like the video as that does help the algorithm, and please subscribe down below for future content and support the channel. Angkor Wat is the reason that 50% of everybody who comes to Cambodia for tourism goes to Cambodia. So Angkor Wat translated means capital temple city and was built as a mandala dedicated to the Hindu god Vishnu, which is peculiar because every other Angkor temple is dedicated to Shiva, and yet this one is dedicated to Vishnu. From the 9th to the 15th centuries, Angkor was the capital of the Khmer Empire, and for most of this time, up until the Industrial Revolution, Angkor was actually the city in the world with the largest population of nearly 1 million people. And the Khmer Empire at that time stretched from today Myanmar, Cambodia, Thailand, Vietnam, Laos, and down into Malaysia. So in the middle of the Khmer reign during the 12th century, roughly 900 years ago according to our history textbooks, Angkor Wat was built. Now if you've ever seen Angkor Wat, the most noticeable and widely recognized part of it are the 5 towers, the central being 213 feet tall. That is the tower that represents Mount Meru itself, where Shiva supposedly resides at the center of the world, according to Hindu mythology. The surrounding 4 towers represent the peaks of Mount Meru, the walls surrounding Angkor Wat, the surrounding mountain ranges of that mountain, the 4 courtyards represent the continents known at the time, and the moat represents the oceans. Astonishingly, the ancient builders also designed the main tower to perfectly align with the sun precisely at the equinoxes of each year during spring, around March 20th, and autumn during September 23rd. Another form of Hindu mythology representation is shown through the carvings into the sandstone, called bas-reliefs. On the 800-meter wall in particular, there are 3,000 divine nymph figures called apsaras. Apsaras are heavenly nymphs that dance and entertain the gods. And if there's not an apsara carved into Angkor Wat along the walls, every single inch of Angkor is carved in some sort of detail. It's astonishing, really. And one bas-relief in particular that you cannot miss is the Sea of the Churning of Milk. The serpent Vasuki wrapped around Mount Mandara, which is pulled by 108 figures, representing good and evil, with Vishnu in human form helping the churning process, using the serpent as a form of rope to churn the sea, which represents time. Now the purpose of this carving is to illustrate the gods obtaining the elixir of immortality, but on a deeper level symbolizes a cycle of time. Now this cycle of time is known as a precession. This is only something that advanced mathematicians and ancient astronomers could have understood, because a precession is a measurement of stars. A precession is a measurement of the North Pole axis as the Earth rotates over a long period of time as observed from the viewer on Earth. This is only known if you've been on Earth for thousands of years to then document every year in the movement of the stars around the North Pole. It's mind-blowing that they understood this back then. This isn't the only connection that Angkor Wat has with the stars, however, because Angkor Wat actually resembles the sky version of the constellation Draco. But this is from 10,500 BC. So how do they know this? Why is this temple in alignment with the mirrored image of that constellation so long ago? Now when you look up who made Angkor Wat, you're told it's King Suryavarman II. Now this is a usurper king, and that means this is someone who killed someone to overtake the throne. The crazy part is this boy was 14 years old when he did that, so he killed his uncle to take the throne at 14. King Suryavarman was frequently in battle attempting to expand the empire against the Dai Viet. This was a Vietnamese kingdom that had asserted its independence from China in 939. But he was also reclaiming lands from another tribe called the Champa. Some believe that because Vishnu was called the protector, and that King Suryavarman's name means protector of the sun, that this is why it was dedicated to Vishnu, or some would say a funeral or burial ground for King Suryavarman. But I don't really think so, because in fact he was never even buried there. He died in battle, and his body never even ended up there. Several years later, after King Suryavarman's death, the Champa made their way into the Khmer lands in 1177 and severely damaged much of Angkor Wat. However, King Jayavarman VII, who reigned from 1181 to 1220, he was next in power and quickly became notoriously known as the most powerful and productive king the Khmer Empire had ever seen. He connected the towns to the city with roads, provided hospitals, but first and foremost, he reclaimed Angkor Wat. But when he did so, he felt that the Hinduism had let him down. The Hindu gods had let down him and his people. So he then moved the capital a mile away to Angkor Thom, where you can see the famous Bayon temple today. But when he did this, he made this dedicated now, instead of to Hinduism, to Buddhism. So Angkor Wat was actually not Hindu for very long at all, and today still remains a very Buddhist place of worship. Building Angkor Wat was an enormous undertaking that involved quarrying and lots of digging. First off, they had to create a moat around the temple. This alone involved an excavation of 1.5 million cubic meters of sand and silt. And when finished, the moat measured 200 meters wide, a perimeter of 5 kilometers or 3 miles, and 4 meters deep. And in some cases, I saw other sources that it's actually 25 to 28 feet deep. Now with a moat, of course, you need a bridge. So they built a 617-foot bridge. When you gaze upon Angkor Wat, to the naked eye, it all appears to be of sandstone, but a different kind of rock called laterite actually lies underneath. Now, laterite was close to Angkor Wat. This was a hard stone, so they used this as the formation shape of the temple and used the sandstone to layer on afterwards so that the carvings could be done easier and more accurate. But sandstone is nowhere to be found near Angkor Wat. In fact, the only sandstone deposits are far away, over 30 kilometers away. And this is where the interesting part of the story begins, because what did they have to do then? They would have to have quarried the rock, bring the rock on a raft, take the raft downstream through canals in which they built to create shortcuts instead of taking the Siem Reap River all the way down and then upstream to actually get to Angkor Wat. No, they created canals, which saved them a lot of time. But again, they had to create those canals. So they pass through the canals. Then they take all the boulders and the rocks off. They take it to the site. They mold it to the shape that it needs to be to fit next to the blocks next to that and on top and so on and so forth. Then they had to carve it. They had to carve all the details or the bas reliefs, which would tell a story. And at the end of it all, the whole building lines up with the stars. Now the thing that stumps me is that each block weighs up to 1.5 tons. That's 1,500 kilos or 3,300 pounds. According to records, the construction of Angkor Wat involved 300,000 workers and 6,000 elephants. Now this poses to me one of the biggest mysteries of them all. Let's just say it took 37 years to make, not 30 years or 35. We'll go with the largest estimate of 37. Now let's say for all 37 years, 24/7, 365, that people were working. All 300,000 people were working at any given time. That's no breaks, no religious ceremonies, no death, no illness, working in the dark, no rainfall delays, none of that. Let's just say perfect conditions for all that time, 24/7, they're working. In order to accomplish this in time, my simple math tells me that 371.5 ton stones had to be quarried, placed perfectly, and carved. That's 16 stones an hour, roughly 47,000 pounds of rock. And one of the most impressive parts of this is that no mortar was used. No mortar, no clay, no binding. Even when we make a basic brick house today, we see the mortar, we see the cement, the gray part. There was none of this, just like the pyramids of Giza that has also stumped many people still today. How did they make this so precise? You can't even fit a razor blade through most of Angkor Wat and the precise lines of all the stone cuts. Same with the pyramids of Giza. It's phenomenal. It's unbelievable. And that's really the basis of this video. How did these people do this? What did they know that we don't know today? We went through the Dark Ages. We went through a long period of time where no advancements in technology were made. I think we went far back in time. We started over at some point, and now we're working our way up. But back then, far before 900 years ago, during the Egypt time when that was made, Göbekli Tepe, there's all these ancient structures that really have so many mysteries and unresolved answers that really beg the question, are these structures as old as we're giving them credit for? Probably not. Really, probably not. And what did they know? How did they build this? Just with hands and chisels? Am I really supposed to believe that this was done with hands and chisels by 300,000 people? Like, it just doesn't add up. In any case, that's it for this one. I wish I had some concrete answers to provide, but these are just questions that we're always looking for the answers to, because still after all this time, there's so much unknown about Angkor Wat, and that's why it's so amazing, so mysterious, and definitely worth checking out. So if you're ever in Cambodia or in Southeast Asia, make a trip there, because it's definitely worth your time. Thanks again for watching, guys. Subscribe down below and give this video a thumbs up for the YouTube algorithm. I much appreciate your time, and we'll see you guys on the next video.